The hearing began in a tense atmosphere as soon as the room filled with reporters and committee members. A secret memo from the White House had set everything in motion by ordering a 90-day pause on all foreign aid. The order was clear. Every dollar spent on foreign projects was to be stopped immediately, while officials checked for any waste or fraud. It was part of President Trump's plan to save money and make sure that funds were not misused. Almost immediately, a new oversight group called DOGE, backed by Elon Musk, jumped in. Their job was to make sure that no agency, especially USAID, was ignoring the order. Within days, DOGE's sharp data checks showed that USAID was still spending money. Soon, leaked images and documents revealed that millions of taxpayer dollars were flowing into projects in faraway countries with little proper oversight. People started to wonder why the government was sending money abroad when there were so many problems at home. Senator Adam Schiff took the stand to defend USAID, insisting that the agency was crucial for keeping global peace and stability. He argued that cutting its funds would lead to chaos not only abroad, but at home too, claiming that if USAID could be shut down, other programs like the Department of Education and Social Security might suffer as well. Schiff spoke slowly and clearly, choosing his words with care as he tried to explain that foreign aid was a cornerstone of American strength. But then, Republican leader Jim Jordan took the floor. With a calm yet forceful tone, Jordan began his line of questioning. "Today, we are here to expose what's been hidden for too long," he said, his voice rising slightly as he addressed the room. "We have documents, screenshots, and even videos that show USAID ignoring the clear order to freeze spending." The room fell quiet as he continued. "Senator Schiff, you claim that this aid is vital. But when our own communities suffer, when we can't fix the water crisis in Flint, how can we justify spending money on projects abroad?" There was a brief pause as reporters scribbled notes. Schiff leaned forward and replied, "If we stop USAID, we open the door to cutting other critical services. Once one program is targeted, the next one won't be far behind." His measured tone was designed to calm fears, but it did little to ease the growing tension. Jordan wasted no time. He played a video clip on the large screen behind him. The clip showed Rwanda's president at a press conference, admitting that without foreign aid, his country would have to learn to stand on its own. "Listen to this," Jordan said, his tone laced with sarcasm. "Rwanda's leader is saying that cutting aid might actually help them become self-reliant. Doesn't that challenge your argument, Senator Schiff?" As the video ended, murmurs spread through the chamber. Some committee members exchanged glances, while others made notes. Schiff's face remained composed, but his hands trembled slightly as he held the microphone. "We cannot reduce our aid without risking global chaos," he stated firmly. "The stability of many nations, and by extension, our own security, is at stake." The exchange continued as additional members of the committee joined the discussion. Representative Linda Vasquez, sitting at the far left of the table, asked in a clear voice, "Senator Schiff, can you explain in simple terms what would really happen if USAID's work were paused?" Schiff took a deep breath before replying. "If USAID is shut down or even slowed down, it could have far-reaching and potentially irreversible effects on global stability. It's not just about dollars and cents. It's about our influence in the world." For several minutes, the room was filled with a tense silence as everyone absorbed Schiff's words. Then Jim Jordan leaned in again, his eyes narrowing as he flipped through a stack of papers. "Let's talk about that memo," he said slowly, holding up a printed copy for everyone to see. "This isn't a random decision. This was an executive order from President Trump, a deliberate move to freeze all foreign aid for 90 days. And you know what that means, doesn't it?" Jordan's voice trailed off for a moment as he let the weight of his words sink in. Reporter after reporter tapped away on their keyboards as Jordan continued. It was a trap, a way to catch agencies in the act of spending money they shouldn't be spending. And guess what? USAID was right at the top of the list. He paused, glancing around the room, before adding, "The evidence shows that USAID ignored clear instructions and instead continued its usual spending habits. This is not just mismanagement. It's a betrayal of the trust the American people have placed in their government." Schiff's response was measured. "I'm not here to hide behind politics," he said, his tone firm yet weary. I'm here because I believe in the importance of foreign aid and in the role USAID plays in keeping our nation safe. But his words only seemed to fuel Jordan's determination. With a smirk, Jordan retorted, "Safety? Or are we just lining the pockets of a few powerful people?" The hearing stretched on as the dialogue grew more intense. Representative Mark Holloway, a strong supporter of Trump's agenda, leaned forward. "Senator Schiff," he said sharply, "why did your administration try to block Doge's investigation? Were you trying to hide something?" Schiff hesitated, his eyes flickering between his notes and the faces in the room. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," he replied, a note of uncertainty in his voice. Before anyone could press further, another Republican, Representative Antonio Delgado, joined in. He held up a document for all to see. According to NBC reports, Delgado said, "Security officials at USAID tried to prevent Doge from even entering the building to access their records. This is not a mistake. It's an attempt to obstruct a proper investigation." The room buzzed with quiet conversations and the shuffling of papers as the gravity of the allegation set in. For a long moment, the room was silent, the tension almost palpable. Schiff's jaw tightened as he looked down at the document. "I will look into that matter," he said cautiously, "but I can assure you there is no cover-up here." His voice, however, did little to ease the skepticism around him. Jim Jordan wasn't finished. He leaned back in his chair, his tone shifting from aggressive to almost conversational. "Let's break this down again," he said, addressing both the room and the cameras. Trump's 90-day freeze wasn't just about saving money. It was a smart move, a trap set to expose those who flout the rules. And as it turns out, USAID fell right into that trap. He paused, letting his words echo in the silent chamber. "Every day, we see examples of agencies that claim to be working for the American people, but are actually wasting money on projects that benefit only a select few." A reporter from the press gallery shouted, "Senator Schiff, do you have any comment on that?" But before Schiff could answer, Jordan continued, "Look, if we can't even get our own water crisis fixed in Flint, Michigan, then why are we sending money to fund musical events in far-off lands like Ireland? This is about common sense, and the common man is tired of being fooled." At this point, the debate had clearly become more than just an argument about money. It was a battle for the hearts and minds of the American people. Schiff tried once more to steer the conversation back to the bigger picture. If we pull the plug on USAID, the ripple effects will be felt worldwide. Our influence, our security, and our global standing could all be at risk, he said, his voice firm with conviction. "We must be careful not to let short-term political gains undermine long-term national interests." But Jordan was quick to counter. With a sly grin, he said, "Oh, come on, Adam. Every time you speak, it feels like you're trying to hide behind lofty words. Meanwhile, the facts are right here." He held up another printed news report and read aloud. "President Trump has asked Congress to end tax perks for billionaire sports team owners and hedge fund managers to help cover tax cuts for the middle class. This isn't just about saving money. It's about making sure that the system works for everyone, not just the rich." He looked around, daring Schiff to respond. "Doesn't that tell you something about the priorities of the current administration?" Schiff's eyes darted briefly to the report before he answered. "What you're suggesting is that the freeze was designed to punish those who have benefited from the system. I disagree. The purpose of the freeze was to bring accountability, not to harm anyone." His voice wavered slightly, but he pressed on. "We have to remember that the aid we provide has long-term benefits, and cutting it off abruptly could have unforeseen consequences." The debate then shifted to a discussion about the future. Another committee member, a usually quiet senator, spoke up. "Senator Schiff, if USAID is crippled by this freeze, what do you propose we do to maintain our global influence?" he asked, genuinely curious. Schiff took a moment before replying. "We must work together to reform and improve our systems. We need better oversight, yes, but we cannot let short-term measures destroy long-term programs that have served us well for decades." His response was met with a mix of nods and skeptical glances from the other side. Jordan, still in full control of the floor, leaned forward with a tone of finality. "The truth is, folks," he said, "the American people deserve better than a government that wastes their money and hides behind empty promises." It's time to take a hard look at the agencies that have been running wild with our tax dollars. He paused, scanning the room before continuing. If we can't fix our own problems here at home, then why are we willing to send our money overseas to fix problems we never created? For several long minutes, the exchange continued with both sides throwing questions and counter-questions at each other. At one point, the atmosphere in the room was so charged that even the sound of a pen tapping on a desk seemed to carry the weight of the issues at hand. Schiff's calm but strained voice filled the room as he defended the long-term benefits of foreign aid, while Jordan's relentless questioning and pointed remarks left little room for concession. As the hearing moved into its final stages, the mood began to shift. Jordan's colleagues on the Republican side began to express their satisfaction with what they had seen, one after another. They applauded each pointed remark and every document that seemed to support their case. Even a few reporters, scribbling furiously in their notebooks, couldn't help but capture the intensity of the debate. Then, as if to add a final twist to the day's drama, Jim Jordan brought up a matter that hit a personal note. "Let's talk about the impact on our own community," he said. "What happens when big donors and wealthy interests benefit at the expense of the American people? When the system is rigged to favor the rich while everyday citizens struggle to get by?" His voice softened for a brief moment, but then hardened again as he looked directly into the camera. "This isn't just about foreign aid. It's about fairness, about justice, and about making sure that no one is above the law." A murmur of agreement spread across the room as the camera panned to various committee members and reporters. Schiff, now visibly tired, cleared his throat and tried once more to explain his position. "I believe that our commitment to foreign aid is an investment in our future," he said. "Yes, there have been mistakes, and yes, there is room for improvement. But pulling the plug entirely is not the answer." His words, though sincere, were met with skeptical looks and a few audible scoffs from the opposing side. The hearing then took an unexpected turn when a junior staffer approached the podium with additional documents. "Senator," the staffer said, handing over a thick folder, "we have more evidence of how USID tried to block the audit." The room fell silent as the staffer briefly summarized the documents. "Security reports indicate that there were deliberate actions taken to prevent those from accessing key records inside the USAID building. These actions are now being reviewed by independent investigators." Jordan took the folder, flipping through its pages with deliberate care. "Now this," he said, holding up one of the pages for everyone to see, "is the kind of proof that shows us exactly where the problem lies. This is not an accident or mistake. It is a pattern of behavior that must be corrected." His voice grew louder with each word, resonating with the conviction of someone who believed he was righting a great wrong. For nearly 10 minutes, the committee engaged in a heated back and forth. Schiff repeatedly emphasized the importance of global stability and the long-term benefits of aid, while Jordan and his colleagues pressed for accountability and immediate action. The conversation wove back and forth between technical details, policy implications, and personal accusations. The dialogue was marked by moments of silence, interspersed with raised voices, and the rapid clicking of cameras capturing every nuance. As the clock ticked on, the hearing began to feel like a marathon of words and ideas. Every now and then, someone in the room would reference past scandals, drawing parallels between the current debate and previous instances of government oversight failures. "Remember Flint," Jordan said at one point, "when we could barely fix our own water systems, yet we were busy funding projects overseas? That's the kind of mismanagement we're dealing with here." Schiff responded by reiterating that every decision has its consequences, both seen and unseen. "I understand the frustration," he said slowly, "but we must consider the bigger picture. International aid is not a luxury. It's a necessity in a world where instability in one region can lead to crises that affect us all." His voice, though steady, betrayed the exhaustion of defending a position he felt was under constant attack. The hearing continued into its final half hour with more voices joining the fray. A few lesser-known senators offered their thoughts, trying to mediate between the extremes. One senator from the Midwest remarked, "I think we all agree that we need accountability, but we also need to ensure that we do not throw out the baby with the bathwater." His words, while conciliatory, did little to bridge the widening gap between the two sides. At one point, a well-known political analyst in the room leaned over to a colleague and whispered, "This is more than a hearing. It's a turning point. People are watching, and history is being written right here." Even as the whispered comments swirled around the room, the dialogue grew more impassioned. Every sentence seemed designed to capture the attention of the nation, every word a call to action. As the session neared its end, Jim Jordan stood up once more, his tone now both reflective and decisive. "We have heard a lot today," he said slowly, "and while opinions may differ, one thing is clear. The American people deserve transparency, accountability, and above all, honesty." He paused, glancing around the room as if daring anyone to disagree. "It's time for us to act, to fix the mistakes of the past, and to ensure that no agency, no matter how important it may seem, can hide behind bureaucratic red tape and outdated practices." Schiff, who had remained seated for much of the final exchange, stood as well. His face was somber, his eyes reflecting the heavy burden of defending a long-standing program under intense scrutiny. "I still believe that cutting off aid completely would hurt us in the long run," he said, his voice low and steady. "But I also agree that reform is needed. We must work together to ensure that every dollar is spent wisely and that our nation's future is not compromised by short-sighted decisions." The room fell into a thoughtful silence as both sides considered the implications of the day's debate. Reporters continued to take notes and snap photos, knowing that every word would soon be replayed on television screens across the country. Then, in a final act that underscored the day's drama, Jim Jordan tapped his gavel and announced, "This hearing is now adjourned." The sharp sound of the gavel echoed through the chamber, marking the end of an event that had clearly captured the attention of the nation. As the committee members filed out of the room, the air was thick with uncertainty and anticipation. Some left with a sense of victory, while others appeared resigned to the challenges ahead. Outside, the buzz of reporters and the murmur of onlookers indicated that the story was far from over. In small clusters, people discussed what they had just witnessed, a battle of words that symbolized a larger fight against corruption and waste in government spending. Over the next several minutes, as the corridors of the building filled with the sound of hurried conversations and the clicking of cameras, one thing became clear. The issues raised in the hearing were not just about USAID or foreign aid. They were about the future of American accountability, the balance of power between government agencies and oversight bodies, and the promise that every taxpayer's dollar should be spent with care and responsibility. In the days to come, news outlets would replay the heated exchanges, experts would analyze every statement, and the public would debate whether the actions taken today were a step forward or a dangerous misstep. But for now, as the last echoes of the gavel faded away, the message remained unmistakable. No institution, no agency, and no political figure is beyond scrutiny. The American people, it seemed, were determined to demand the transparency and accountability that their hard-earned money deserved. And as the building slowly emptied, the legacy of the day's events hung in the air, a reminder that even in the midst of political storms, the quest for truth and justice is a never-ending journey.